Without good photos, your customer may never click over to the product page. We are also going to cover the offer section for your product. We could talk about photos for ages and ages. And I'm not a photography expert. Everyone has their favorite editing software. I use Affinity Photo. Some people use Photoshop. You can kind of do it in Illustrator. Some people just solely use Canva. It's totally up to you what photo editing software you use and how you edit your photos. So instead of talk about editing, we're going to talk about the requirements from Amazon and some things you need to consider when you're doing your editing. Some of the requirements for Amazon Handmade have changed over the years, but they have definitely come to be more like the regular Amazon listings. So that's something to keep in mind as you transition into Amazon Handmade. I am definitely going to cover photos more in my course that is coming out in March. And that's something we can get specific on each one of your listings and how you do your photos inside the course. So we're not, like I said, we're not going to get into editing too much. So this is the first thing your customer is likely to see when they're searching for products in the Amazon search results. I know I typically look at photos and title as like the first two things. So it can kind of interchange depending on what I'm looking for. But a lot of times the photos is one of the first things I look at. Amazon requires all of their sellers now to have their first photo be just of the product being sold on a true white background. So let's talk about what true white means. True white is 255, 255, 255, or solid Fs in hex code. That's what they're looking for in straight solid white. If you're taking physical actual photos of your product, I recommend using a white background, and that should make it a little bit easier when you go into your photo editing software to do the background removal so that your product doesn't interfere with anything in the background. I know sometimes when I try to cut out the background like around me now, it makes it very difficult and the edges are kind of weird with all the different colors. So I recommend using a solid color. It doesn't have to be white, actually. It could be gray, it could be blue, but just a solid colored background so that it's easier to cut out that background later. There can't be any words on the first photo, and you want to make sure it's just of the product being sold and there's nothing extra in the photo. This is gonna be what is also your thumbnail photo in search results, so you wanna make sure it's very clear what the product is. Sometimes in my stickers, it's kind of hard to see like the whole sheet, so I'll do like a cropped section and make it bigger so that you can see the icons on the sheet, but you definitely wanna make it clear of what the item is in that first photo. You can also just search Amazon. If you're selling candles, you can just look up candles and see how some of the photos are staged of the actual candles with the white background to get an idea of how you may want to stage yours, but keep in mind that it's just the product. There should be no extras, which is totally different than Etsy. One thing that I did notice when doing my research for photos, if you're selling something that's on a model, so say I'm selling this t-shirt, the model has to be standing. She can't be sitting, she can't be laying down. A lot of the models that are in the first photo, you can't see their head, you can only see like neck down. So that's something to keep in mind if you're selling something that's on a model. If they're selling pants, they'll just sew waist down so that you can see what the pants look like, but the model has to be standing. Also says that if you're selling products for children or babies, that you should do them as a flat lay. So you should not have a baby in a onesie as your first photo. And this kind of caught my attention and I was like, is that how I've seen stuff listed? So I actually typed in baby onesie, and Gerber actually has all of their white onesies that come in like a big pack, just kind of like stacked in their photo, and it's white on white, so it's kind of more difficult to see them, which that's a fault of Amazon, but they're just kind of stacked in an array so you can see that there's multiples, and they're just a flat lay. So there are some sellers that use actual babies, which actually goes against Amazon's terms for their photos. Amazon does have discretion to like take those down if they see fit, but I can think of a multitude of reasons as to why not to use kids or children or babies in your photos, but the first one they say should be a flat lay. That doesn't mean that you can't show it on a baby in another photo, but they want the first one to be a flat lay, which I found just completely interesting. As we're talking about photos of clothing, if it's of intimates or anything in that realm, it cannot be explicit or obscene. Again, Amazon reserves the right to take these down if they decide that it's not a good photo or could be seen as something other than just a photo of a pair of underwear. So a lot of the like underwear or bra listings, it will just be a flat lay, which is what I would recommend, especially for a first photo. I buy my underwear on Amazon, like who doesn't? And all of the photos, the first photos are flat lays because they come in packs. They can show all the different colors. So that's something to consider if you were gonna sell anything intimate. There may be handmade sellers that make underwear. That seems like a weird thing to sell as a handmade seller, but it's possible. So I wanted to throw it in as something you should consider. One of the things that they did say is that the first photo, the product should take up 85% of the photo. So keep in mind that the majority of the photo should be your product. This is probably because it's also used as your thumbnail, so you want to make sure it's big enough that when it scales down on mobile devices, you can still see what the product is. It also said that if you're doing lifestyle shots or other shots of the product, that the product needs to fill at least 50% of the photo. So if you sell, you know, a cat litter box, it still needs to be 50% of the photo if you put other stuff around it. So something to keep in mind when you're listing your products and taking the photos. You can also do infographics. So one of the things that I tend to use in my photos is a picture of the actual sticker with like sizes on it, because I have some that are more decorative. They're not just little circles. So I'll kind of show like a tall and wide, and that's one of my photos. It takes up a photo spot, and it's actually a really good photo because I can zoom in on the sticker and show exactly what it looks like with all the details and show the size at the same time. So it's a good way to kind of show your product. And if you look at a lot of products, like if you're buying a piece of furniture, they'll have one that is the item with a bunch of measurements on it. So that's a good way to kind of give more information about your product in a photo, because a lot of times it's hard to find that information in the listing if they're not very explicit with it in the bullet points. So then you could kind of have the information in two places, and some people don't read the descriptions. They just purchase based on photos. So if you don't have anything in there about size and they get it and it's too small or it's too big, they may end up returning it, and then it becomes a hassle for you to have to like repackage and send back in. So something to keep in mind is to put things like sizes in your actual photos so that it's easy to find. So technically mock-ups aren't allowed. I use digital photos because taking individual photos of all 120 items, like 3 or 4 different ways, is very time consuming, and editing them is even harder. So I use what I would call a digital photo. So it's actually the sticker sheet. It's just the digital image. So the colors are more crisp and it's easier to see, as opposed to me taking an actual picture and trying to fix it. Something to keep in mind if you're doing t-shirts and you don't want to do, you don't want to make every single option, and you don't want to make them in a specific size. You can do a mock-up. Just be really careful with how you do the mock-up. I've seen some pretty terrible mock-ups before, and I'm really surprised that Amazon has let them stay up. I know with handmade sellers, there's a little bit more leeway in how the photos are done, but you definitely want to make sure that it looks correct. I mean, I've seen some that the words are like huge and the shirt is small, and I'm like, is it really that big? Or the shirt will have a wrinkle in it, so then they try to overlay just the words, and it's very obvious that it's like a mock-up with the words overlaid on a photo, and I'm like, is that really how it's gonna look? So then I'll just click out, because I don't get a true sense of how the shirt's gonna look. I've seen other sticker sellers try to take an image of a planner and like stick a digital sticker on top of the paper planner, and it's very obvious that it's not part of the actual photo. So keep that in mind when you're doing your photos. You don't want to make it very obvious like what you're doing, that you're like kind of faking it with the photos. Amazon, again, reserves the right to take them down. So just something to keep in mind when you're working on your photos. So let's talk about some of the size requirements. Photos should be 1,000 pixels in either height or width at a minimum. The more pixels you have, the better for the zoom quality. Obviously, the 1000 is the lowest it can be for the zoom in and out feature that they have on their website, where you can click on the photo and then you can kind of zoom into a section. It can get kind of pixelated if you're only at 1000. I typically stick with a square photo because I can also use that on social media, and I typically do 2580 pixels per side. It's just easier on me to have photos that I can use at multiple places. Plus, they do kind of show up in a square. I mean, you could make them vertical or landscape, but I think the spot on Amazon is typically more square, just like most social media sites. The preferred format for the photos is a JPEG file. You can do a TIFF file or a .gif file, not the animated GIF, but a regular GIF file. You can have, the JPEGs are going to be the most universal that you can use on most sites. So again, that's what I kind of stick with. Occasionally I'll do a PNG for something, but those PNGs aren't for Amazon, and I don't even think you can upload a PNG. I think JPEG is what I typically stick with and looks the best. Amazon recommends having at least 4 photos. You have the opportunity to have up to 9 photos per listing. 9 is a lot, especially for something like a sticker. A lot of or candles or something like that. I mean, there's only so many ways you can photograph candles or stickers. So keep in mind that you don't want to include too many. I would definitely try to have the 4 that they recommend, but having more different lifestyle shots of something like a candle, if I'm scrolling through and there's like picture after picture after picture of just in different spaces, I'm gonna get bored. Just don't do too many to where your customer will get bored with looking through the pictures and not fully understanding why they're seeing so many. The maximum file size that the photo can be is 10 megabytes. So keep that in mind when you're making your photos. I know the 2580 pixel square tends to be a pretty good size. It's not over a certain megabyte or anything. It's typically pretty easy to upload. It's pretty quick. So that's definitely something I would recommend, staying in that range so that your photos are quick to upload too, because it takes time for it to add it to the system, and they add one at a time. It won't add all of, like, if you can upload multiples. You can do one at a time or you can do multiples, and I've done multiples before and done like 4 or 5 at a time, and it definitely takes it a minute to upload each one because it doesn't do all of them at the same time. It does them individually. So the Amazon software is a little slow sometimes. And the last thing you don't want to include on your photos is anything that is an advertisement. Again, don't put bestseller, don't put on sale, don't put short time. You don't want to put a 60% off banner or something like that, because when the sale goes away and maybe it's not your bestseller anymore, it's still going to show up that way, and it's going to confuse the customer if they see a 60% off banner but a full price. So just keep that in mind. Don't put anything that would be kind of irrelevant to the actual product on the photos. So let's talk about the offer section. This is where you can set the price of your product, if you're going to put your product on sale, the tax, all of that. You may need to adjust your pricing based on Amazon. I know a lot of us like to keep our product the same price across multiple platforms, but to be quite honest, my fees on Amazon and Etsy are a lot higher than what they are on my website. So my stickers typically run a little lower on my actual website because I don't have all the fees. Now, if you don't order over a certain amount, you do have to pay for shipping, and the shipping is included if it's a Prime item. So something to keep in mind when you're listing your product, your FBA, your regular seller fulfilled fees are going to be different than your Prime FBA fulfilled by Amazon fees. So, and that's something that Amazon actually has a calculator for you to figure it out, but keep that in mind that your prices may need to be adjusted to be on Amazon. I have a full video comparing the fees to Etsy and Amazon. I'll link it in the cards and in the description box, so you can go back to that if you need to see the fees for Amazon versus Etsy. For the tax section, there is a specific tax code that you're going to want to make sure that you select. This is another reason why I don't start listings from scratch anymore. I try to copy one, is to make sure that things like this are selected and I don't miss them. But it's A_Gen, GEN _ TAX. So that is the general tax code that you can include on all of your listings. There's a bunch of different options. If there's a different one that you need to select based on your state or something, I can't recommend which one to pick. That's always the one I choose. So that's something to keep in mind. And Amazon typically pays all of your taxes for you. They do the market facilitator tax, so you don't have to fool with sending them into every single state. Probably the most important thing on this offer page, other than the price and selecting the tax, is your production time. So I've been caught by this before, where if I don't put in a production time down toward the bottom of the listing, there's a place to put it in. If I don't put it in, Amazon assumes it's like ready to ship, or I can do it in a day. So make sure that you have your production time filled in, especially for seller fulfilled items. That is correct for that type of listing. If you're doing seller fulfilled candles and you don't always keep a huge stock, but it takes you a couple of days to make the candle, if someone were to order it and it not be in stock, make sure you have that set up, because otherwise Amazon will expect you to ship it tomorrow or today. So definitely something to keep in mind to fill that production time in. That is one of the things that I'm having to go back and make sure is filled in on a lot of my listings, because I didn't realize that when I first set things up. So that's definitely something I've learned over my years of selling on Amazon. The production time is in number of days. So I have mine set to 4, so that if I don't have something in stock, I've got a couple of days to like get my act together and get it made. Again, keep that in mind. It's in days, not weeks or months or whatever. It's a day thing. So you can also set a max order quantity, which I don't do, which could be a bad thing. I don't know. I don't really keep track of inventory with Amazon. I know a lot of people on Etsy will make 20 of something and they'll set their quantity to be 20. So then when it's sold out, it's sold out. Then they can go back in and add it as they make more. That's not something I do, because my items can be made pretty quickly if they're designed, which most of them are. Then I will just set it at 100 and call it a day. That means someone could go in and order 100 sheets of stickers. Now, if they did that, I would be elated, and I have a machine that could do it. But I think initially in the beginning, I couldn't have filled that many. I mean, I just had these guys, these little silhouettes. So filling 100 sheets of stickers would be a little difficult. So keep that in mind, that whatever your quantity is set at inside Amazon, if you don't set a max order quantity, they can order all of it. So if you're a candle maker and you only keep about 20 in stock, I would keep your inventory around 20 so that they can't order like 100. So just keep that in mind when you're listing, that you can set a max order quantity so that they don't wipe you out. I haven't seen that be an issue. I know sometimes that on regular Amazon, I've seen sellers post in the forum that a competitor came in and like bought all their items and then relist them at like a higher price. So that's something that could happen, but doesn't really happen with handmade stuff, because your price is probably already higher than most of the non-handmade items, and them trying to buy it and resell it higher is just not conducive to the market. So it is a possible thing, but not likely with our products. You can also set a restock date. So if you sell out and you're working on making new products, you can set a restock date in there. It will allow populate like a shipping date for the customer. So keep that in mind, that it will show up your inventory as available on a certain day. If the customer goes ahead and orders it and it doesn't ship on the day that you had as in a restock date, then it could affect your shipping time and could be a late order, which affects your account health, which could in turn get you deactivated. It's a snowball. So if you're going to use a restock date, make sure you know exactly that it's going to be restocked on that date. Like, you know, you're going to work over the weekend to get all of your stuff restocked. So just keep that in mind, that if you put a restock date in and it shows that date to the customer and the customer orders and then you don't ship it on time, it could cause it to be late. If there's other fields on that offer page that you're unsure what they mean, there's always a little question mark icon that you can kind of hover over and it will give you a short description. If that's still not enough, you can go back into your main seller central page all the way to the top. There's a help box and you can just type in what that little box says. Like if it says restock date, you can type that in and it will give you a multitude of articles and videos and all kinds of stuff that you can look at that will help explain what that means. on the Amazon platform. They do have some things I still don't understand because it's more geared toward people that have products that are manufactured for them. They're not manufacturing them themselves. So keep that in mind too. Like some of the stuff that you look up may not be completely relevant, but it will at least give you an idea of what that box is for. And one of the things that we're going to talk through in the course is all those fields and what they mean, and we're going to kind of discuss them as a group and kind of go through them and make sure that we all understand what they mean and it makes sense for our particular business. So that course is coming out in March. And if you would like to get advice on your listings and your photos and how you should set up your products, one of the bonuses that I'm going to be giving to my waitlist is a 30-minute strategy session. So you can get on the waitlist at primeforsuccess.co/waitlist. Like I said, the course is coming out in March, and I'm super excited to offer you guys a course and go through everything Amazon that is specific for your business. These YouTube videos are great, but that's going to give you more of a one-on-one, higher touch option if you're needing help and working through some of the ideas you have for your particular business. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.